Welcome to Native Talk Arizona, presented by Native Health and KRDP 90.7 FM. I'm host Lanasha Pawadi. Later in the show, I'll talk to award-winning and best-selling author Monique Gray Smith. Susan Levy talks to Dave Auckly, co-founder and co-director of Navajo Nation Math Circles Project.
I'm Susan Levy, and on the phone with me today is Dave Auckly. He's the co-founder and co-director of Navajo Nation Math Circles Project. Hello, and welcome to the show, Dave. We're super excited that you're here and can't wait to learn more about the project.
Thank you so very much for having me. It's wonderful to be here.
So before we get started, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I grew up in Arizona. My dad was a firefighter and my mom a homemaker. I wanted to be an architect as a child. I went to Arizona State, and a math professor there was talking to me before I joined, named Harvey Smith, told me all these wonderful math things, and I somehow got hooked and been in math ever since. So that's a quick overview.
All right, so tell me, what is the Navajo Nation Math Circles Project?
We wish to collaborate with the Dene community to provide inspiring mathematics to both students and teachers there. Partly we'll do what we're asked to do, which we can visit classrooms, we run teacher workshops. Our summer math camp has been featured in a documentary that's aired on PBS stations. We love to blend and mix math with the Dene language and culture, which we work, many of our mathematicians like myself or Bill Agana, have no association with the Dene community other than our lucky chances to visit. Others like Henry Fowler, who's another director, grew up there and is a real expert. So we rely on the people that really know and live in the culture to bring those aspects to it.
So tell me a little bit. I know you've got the Navajo Math Circle Summer Camp. What is that?
And so, you might hear summer camp, and you could imagine people doing things like playing basketball and doing campfire and art and math. And what does math have to do in there? And one of the analogies I like giving here is, let's imagine that the only way our students ever saw basketball is they had to take a basketball course every semester where they had to work on dribbling technique and passing technique and where to stand, and there were tests, and if they didn't pass the test they would fail. Somehow that doesn't sound like so much fun. I mean, this sounds a little bit like what happens with math to some extent. Here, there's no assessment. You're just seeing beautiful patterns and unexpected things that show up where, in things like how you would cut pizza and what cutting a watermelon has to do with four-dimensional space and ways of reflecting triangles to get remarkably complex and intricate designs, or things that would be more, there's a lot of very cool math and the traditional way to lay out a hogan and line it up with the stars and the light that enters and the seasons. Henry just did a wonderful session on that in our March 30th teacher workshop. And so students come and have fun playing with a variety of things, culture, social activities, and math activities.
So what age is it, or what age youth can attend?
This is for students in grades 6 through 12 for the camp, though our program will serve students pre-K phase where they meet with the parents up through high school.
Okay, but the camp is for grades 6th grade through 12th grade, so what is that, like 12 years old, 18, something like that?
12 to 18, yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
And so then do you break those students up, since obviously a 12-year-old, I know you'll have some super gifted younger students or youth. Do you break them up by their interest or their ages or their ability levels with math?
Actually, we don't. This is one of the really cool things about it is we look for what we will often call low floor, high ceiling activities. And so these are things that you can start exploring just after they say just a very little bit. Start doodling here and you'll start noticing a pattern form. Start connecting points on a circle where you skip every seventh point. What patterns emerge? What does it look like? How does this compare to reflections of light in a pool? And these sort of questions have things that can engage people of all ages and abilities and interests. And one of the very cool things you'll discover is often if you take a brand new puzzle and you present it to, a young child or an old man, the young child will be faster, has a faster, Ferrari-like brain. It's just that the older person might have more knowledge to get them a head start. And so it works. We're able to engage across age groups. We tend to split the camp into two teams to give a little bit of competitive and also to make it smaller when we do sessions, which we let the students name the teams. Sometimes they'll name them after clans or of characters or whatever, and make flags before when they do things like play capture the flag, or we have some math competition that we do at the end of each week of the camp. But it's a collaborative thing, not an intensive and not an individual. We want everything to be done in groups and socially.
How many individuals participate in the camp?
I think our biggest camp had 52. When we started in 2013, I think we probably had maybe around 25 students. And typically what will happen is the camp will start getting bigger because a portion of the students that come from 1 year, like the portion of the students that came in 2022, came back. And some of those bring friends. Some don't come back, but then we recruit some more, and over time it can grow. We get a little limited by space. I think we'd have to cut it off if we got more than 50 for the camp this year, because I don't think we have space for more than 50, but I'm not sure that we will reach that level. I think it would be very comfortable to have 35 to 40 students.
So where is the camp?
So that's a good question. So in 2022 and 23, it was at the Coconino, at the Page campus of Coconino County Community College. And we're collaborating with them and with Page Unified. We will certainly bring the students to Coconino County Community College, and it may just be there for at least 8 days of the camp. We have to work out a little something because this year the cafeteria is set up not in the high school but in the middle school. So we will either be in the middle school most days so that we're close to the food, or we will be getting food catered and be in Coconino County Community College. So that's a wrinkle that just came up this past week that we're working out. So all within a block, just all within, a block of the public library there in Page.
So do you have, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, I was going to say, except we do have an overnight camp out that we do in Cow Springs that is really enjoyable for everybody at Fowler's Childhood Home. There's a Hogan and a sweat lodge and sheep pens and animals and a lot of space. And
so I know you mentioned you started doing the camp in 2013. So it's been about 10, 11 years since then. Do you have any success stories? Have any of those youth gone on and done things in math, either teaching math or their careers in math?
Yeah. And so we're just getting to the point that the middle school students that joined us are just now getting through undergraduate college. And so I think it's last year, So here in Page, one of the parts of our camp is we bring in Indigenous role models in STEM, and we were very happy to bring Charmaine Seaton back. Charmaine was a student in our very first camp back in 2013, and today she's working on a PhD in biomedical engineering at Arizona State. I understand that Ervalinda Bahe either just received or is receiving a degree in mathematics from Colorado State University. And so I think that'll be our first student getting a degree in mathematics, which if you think going from middle school through college graduate, it's kind of hard to do that in much less than 10 or 11 years. I understand that Amari Jones and Natamiani Yazi went to Stanford. But since we also do things for teachers, I want to give, there are many, so there will be many more people that I should call out here than I will list in this one answer. But let me call out a teacher, Craig Young, who started attending some of our teacher workshops and then invited some math visitors, and then had us help organize a festival in Tuba City. Then he started running his own math circle program for students, and he did something wickedly cool. He started running a math circle for like the 7th and 8th grade students in the fall, and then in the spring he had the 7th and 8th grade students run a math festival for like the 5th and 6th grade students. And so you see the younger kids looking up to the older kids gaining confidence and all running it there in the community. It was just wickedly beautiful. We've had lots of neat things. I remember in Loop School, there was a teacher, maybe Miss Tate, helped us start making Dene names for some traditional 3D shapes. There's just been so many people that have done so many things for the project.
Quite impressive, all the things and all the people that have been involved, and look at all of the impact that you've made or impacted them with the Navajo Nation, the Circles Camp. That's like amazing. So I've got a question. So if I had a child and wasn't really interested in math, would you recommend that they sign up for this and attend, or do they really need to have an interest in patterns or math or engineering? What would you suggest?
So good question. So we definitely don't want to get students that are told that they have to be here. We want this to be students who want to be there. Now, that doesn't mean you have to be good at math or bad at math, because these explorations. It's not the kind of math that you might be used to, where we're just teaching algorithms, and it's not judgmental. We're not saying how good are you or how bad. We're just saying, hey, look at these cool things and let's explore them together and see what we like. We've certainly had students that have said, hey, you know what? We are away from the school, can't see the friends, but hey, I remember we had 3 boys come to one of the camps who were all good friends who had to sort of go out and live at home, and they're like, hey, if we go to math camp, we can hang out together, we can play basketball and goof off and be together, and hey, this is kind of cool. And but what the main thing that we're looking for, and what we're looking for, is students that want to come explore. So maybe they're curious of what math would be like if it's not the regular assessment algorithms and do this because I said so, but let's look at patterns. And the camp does have other activities and social interactions.
Well, it sounds like an amazing camp. So if my child loves math and wants to do it, this would be an amazing program for him or her.
Absolutely.
Okay. Sounds like a great program. I wish it was down, if there was one in Phoenix. So I've got a question.
Actually, I could say something.
Oh, go ahead.
There is something, the Arizona State University Math Circle program that was running for many years. I think it had some hiccups, but will probably run. But that's something that folks in the Phoenix area, if they're interested, should look into. So if they say Math Circle and then put their location, and so if you put Arizona State Math Circle, you might find a program.
Well, at least for our friends up in northern Arizona, there's the one up in page. So that's great. So I know that they say math is everywhere, but why is it important to learn math when computers and calculators do like pretty much everything and AI now?
So let me do exactly an analogy with this. Gee, there's a car. Why does anybody ever need to exercise? You can just sit in a car and get there, right? You want to develop your spirit, your mind, and your body. And mathematics is just thinking through things that have a definite answer given an input. And this is like cross-training or exercising, but for your mind. It makes you quicker and better able to see and understand things, which I think is really useful for everyone. I think that's probably the biggest goal and reason why we force everybody to take math in school. It's like, yeah, you might need to use algorithms of how to multiply or divide, but in truth, you ask your smartphone, what is this divided by that? The algorithms you need to know if you're going to go further and see and learn other patterns, but the important things are the ideas about how to think, trying examples, working backwards, making a list, these sort of thought processes that you can use in any aspect of your life. If you're looking at a contract, if you think of a special case and look at just a piece of it, it can help you understand better what it says and means.
Definitely a good point. I think a lot of times when I talk to youth, they're like, well, I don't need to know that. I don't need to know how to write. I can use a calculator. I can use my phone. So some good points.
Lay in bed. You don't need to be able to walk or jump or run, but actually you do. Life is better if you're in better shape, and your life is better if your brain is sharper, and you can exercise it the same way, even if it's just to tell jokes and make fun of your friends.
Very true. So, Dave, do you have any information about all of this on your website? Are there any videos or any articles that people can check out?
Yes. Each of our past summer camps has its own webpage where you can read about the staff that ran it. You can read the activities that we do. We even include videos produced during each camp. So a great way to get an idea of what one of our math camps is like is to just look on our website, find an old camp. Even if you look at the application for 2024, we have a video from the camp from 2023, so you can see kids and mathematicians in action. I guess we also have resources for teachers and math activities. So there's a fair bit of information on the website.
So how can our listeners find more information about the Navajo Nation Math Circles program, the summer camp, and how can they contact you?
So I think probably the fastest and best way might be our website, which if you go to NavajoMathCircles.org, probably if you put Navajo Math in any browser, you'll either find us or you'll find the film, the documentary about us, but the documentary about us has links to us. My Gmail is navajomath@gmail.com, and I can connect you to other people in our organization. And my cell phone number, which actually I'm happy to share even on air if people want to text or reach out to me, is 785-473-0273. I guess in addition, we have a book about our program called Inspiring Mathematics, Lessons from the Navajo Math Circles. And then I think I mentioned that there's the Zala Films documentary called Navajo Math Circles. All of our programming is free to people in the community. It's open to anybody who wants to be there and hears about it. The selection process is people who want to be there, and it kind of self-selects because we're up in that Four Corners region. We tend to get people that live in the Four Corners region. In fact, we work just the opposite. We work to bring money and resources into the community. So we work to pay teachers who work with us, chaperones who work with us, send school supplies to schools. And so people should ask us, and we will help as we can.
Well, it sounds like a great camp. I can't wait to hear what success stories come out of this year's camp. And I know it's going to be wonderful, successful, and the youth are going to love it. So thanks for taking the time out of your day to talk to us today, Dave. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so very much. It's been a real pleasure. Please, you and or any of your listeners, feel free to reach out to me. We love to hear from people.
Next on Native Talk Arizona, I'll talk with award-winning and best-selling author Monique Gray Smith. Support for KRDP 90.7 FM comes in part from Native Health, with 2 locations in Phoenix, 4041 North Central Avenue, Building C, near the corner of Central Avenue and Indian School Road, and at 2423 West Dunlap Avenue. Native Health is also located in Mesa at 777 West Southern Avenue, near the corner of Southern Avenue and Extension Road. Native Health provides primary medical, dental, behavioral health, WIC, and wellness services for the urban Native American community. For more information, call 602-279-5262 or visit our webpage at nativehealthphoenix.org. Welcome back to Native Talk Arizona, presented by Native Health and KRDP 90.7 FM. I'm host Lanasha Puwadi. Monique Gray Smith is an award-winning and best-selling author of books for all ages. Some of her books that have been read in Native Health early learning programs include When We Are Kind, My Heart Fills with Happiness, You Hold Me Up, and Braiding Sweetgrass. Hello, Monique, and welcome to our show.
Good morning. I'm thrilled to be with you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And before we get started, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your Indigenous background, and your journey?
Sure. My mom is Cree. She was born in 1940. And in so many of our nations, these stories about being removed at birth, she was removed at birth and didn't grow up knowing where she was from. She knew all the time she was Cree, but didn't know what community she was from. And, you know, that rippled through our whole family and in many ways was the reason, you know, the disconnect for me to start drinking. And when I sobered up, I went to a treatment center, and that was really, you know, I was 23, and that was the journey for our family of really reconnecting to our ancestry. So I identify as Cree and Scottish. My mom's family comes from Papikasees in the Qu'Appelle Valley of Saskatchewan, Treaty 4. I'm a mom. I have twins who are 20. And I'm formally trained as a psychiatric nurse, which seems odd when you think about writing. But in many ways, I use that nursing every day, although I haven't worked in our communities or hospitals for over 20 years now, but I still use it every day, especially one of the most important things I learned in nursing was to pay attention. And that has provided me the gift of stories, the gift of ideas, the gift of dialogue sometimes, the gift of what a character might be wearing or how they might say something by simply paying attention. I live on the incredibly beautiful territories of the Lekwungen-speaking peoples, also known as Victoria, British Columbia in Canada. And one of the things I feel like I get to do in life is put stories to pen and paper for children and young people and adults to read. So that's a little bit about me.
Wow, thank you for sharing that, Monique. How did you get into writing?
When I was nursing, I wanted more ways to contribute. There was so much racism at that time, still in many ways in non-Indigenous health centers. And I applied to a school of social work. And as part of that process, I had to write a personal statement about why I wanted to be a social worker. And I came down for my interview. And when I was leaving that interview, one of the panel women said, "I look forward to reading your book one day." And I really didn't think she was talking to me. I was 6 months sober at that time. I hadn't graduated from high school, even though I had gone back to get my grade 12 and gone to nursing school. I had so many self-limiting beliefs. So I kept opening that door, and she said, "Wait, Monique, I'm talking to you. I look forward to reading your book one day." And that's one of, I travel so many places, and this teaching that we speak the future for ourselves, yes, but also when we see the gifts that somebody's been blessed with, we speak that future for them so that so many things can come into play to help that future unfold. It took 20 years and a near-death experience for me to actually begin writing. And also what it took was, I used to always ask myself, who am I to write a book? And the questions we ask ourselves, Lanasha, are so important. And it was after a ceremony that I started to ask myself, instead of who am I to write a book, I started to ask, what would I write about? And so that question changed everything. And it led to my first published book, Tilly, A Story of Hope and Resilience, which is loosely based on my life. It's creative nonfiction, and it tells some aspects of Canada's history, which really mirrors, in many ways, U.S. history, and how it impacts us as Indigenous people, us as mixed race people, us as, at the time, I was a young woman, And so that's really how it started. And I honestly thought that was it, that I was done. The one book, I had listened to the messages. And then one day I was working at an Aboriginal Head Start, which are our cultural preschools here in Canada. And I witnessed the love of a grandparent and a grandchild, how she took his face in her hands and how his whole body changed by how she looked at him. And that was the seed for the book, My Heart Fills with Happiness, illustrated by Julie Flett. And I just feel like, by paying attention, like I said earlier, these gifts of these ideas for books, I feel very blessed that they continue to come. So that's a little bit of the journey.
Oh, wow, that is amazing. And what drives or motivates you in your careers?
Well, in our house, we didn't have any books in our house until I was in grade 7, and my dad started to sell encyclopedias. So I'm aging myself there a little bit. But I would always go to the library at lunchtime and read. I was one of those kids that if I was playing sports or active in some way like that, I was okay. But I was an introvert, and school doesn't always fit for introverts. So I would go to the library. And I think when I write, I think about all those kids and adults who might be looking for a reflection of themselves somehow. And I think books can provide that to us. Stories can provide that. Movies can provide that. Songs can provide that. And so I think that's part of why I still write, is in hopes that if maybe somebody's feeling a little out of sorts, if they read something that I've written, that maybe it will just help heal their heart a little bit so that they can be kind to themselves and they can be kind to other people. That's mostly why I write.
So what sparks your creativity in your writing?
Well, time without anything on my calendar. I really find that for me, I need empty space to just let the idea and the story unfold. I really do wish I was one of those writers that could sit down, every morning from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. and write. But it's not really my style. My style is when the idea comes, I've got to make space and just write or create that story. So that's mostly how I create the books. Yes, thank you for that question.
Yes, and how has your cultural identity shaped who you are today, and has it impacted your career this far?
Like I mentioned earlier, when I stopped drinking, I was 22, and at 23, I went to a treatment center called Round Lake. It's a cultural treatment center. Oh, I'm going to get a little teary because I don't think I'd be alive had I not gone there. It woke, at that time in that treatment center, woke something up in me that had been asleep, and not just for me, but also asleep for my mom, like I had been saying earlier in our visit. And so that treatment center was absolutely critical in my journey of beginning to understand who am I as a Nihio Esqueo, as a Cree woman and as a Scottish woman, and also understanding, what does that mean? What are the responsibilities with that? And being on a journey continuously to learn and to begin to learn the language. I think for me, it is about, all my books talk really about mixed identity and about how much the colonial structures have impacted our identity and our connection to the land, to the water, to the stars, and especially to our people and to all living beings. Those colonial policies and legislations have been very, very powerful. And so I talk about them in my writing because they have impacted my family so much. Do I wish that we had always known, who we are, where we're from, grown up in community? Of course I do, without any question. And that wasn't my reality. It wasn't my mom's reality. And it isn't the reality for many of our people. So I think for me, it is, this continued learning and continued understanding as I grow and as I evolve. And I think that shows up in the writing.
Oh, yes, that's definitely true. And thank you, Monique, for sharing your story with us. I can't imagine going through all of that, but it's amazing to see how much you've overcome. And now you are writing all these amazing books. But kind of talking about that, why did you include the Indigenous perspective in your writings?
Because it's such an important part of who I am. I think it's such an important part of the journey that we as a country here in Canada, and I think also in the United States. In some ways, I've done a lot of work in the U.S. over the last few years. There's this kind of, I'm trying to think how to say this. It's like the light within us that policies and legislations have impacted for so long are not being impacted in the same way anymore. And so this light within us is shining in a different way. And I really love that, because I think that we have so much to contribute, so many gifts that each and every one of us have been blessed with, to use in a good way to contribute to the wellness of the world.
And Monique, do you hope that your books encourage children to read, to be proud of their heritage and connect to their heritage?
Oh, I for sure do. That's my greatest hope, because that's what was missing for me so much as a child, right? Not only the books, but the books where I felt seen, where I felt understood, where I felt cared about, where I felt held up with dignity. Because the books that I did read did not hold our people up with dignity. So these are my hopes, is that children see themselves, experience themselves, see their family's humor, see the family's love, see the way the family cares for each other and for all the relatives. As well as, I think it's also, equally as important for non-Indigenous children to read these books and experience these books when we're looking at our common humanity in a well world. We need the non-Indigenous children to understand as well. And I think for me that's part of our journey forward.
Oh, yes. And for those who maybe aren't familiar with the books you've written, can you share with us which children's book you've written?
Yeah, so my first children's book was called My Heart Fills with Happiness, illustrated by Julie Flett. And then came You Hold Me Up, illustrated by Danielle Daniel. And I always say who the illustrator is, because their role in creating a book is so important. And sometimes, when you're reading to a child and you say who the illustrator is, you might be reading to a future illustrator. So you have to uphold the dignity. And then came When We Are Kind, illustrated by Dene artist Nicole Neidhart. Circle of Love just came out, again illustrated by Dene artist Nicole Neidhart. And then last September came out a book called I Hope, illustrated by Gabrielle Grimard. And then I have Tilly, A Story of Hope and Resilience, Tilly and the Crazy Eights, a fun story about Tilly and 8 elders who do a road trip from Vancouver, BC to Albuquerque for the World Powwow, and the shenanigans they get into along the way, but also they help us to understand history. And then Braiding Sweetgrass for Young Adults, which was one of my greatest joys, was to adapt that book by Dr. Robin Wall Kimmerer. So those are the ones. I have a few more coming that are on their way, but those are the ones that are currently available.
Oh, that's so exciting. I can't wait to hear more about those books coming up. Can you give us like a little descriptions of your upcoming books?
Coming up is a children's book, again illustrated by Dene artist Nicole Neidhart. It's called Dreaming Alongside. It's a children's picture book that was inspired by my wife and my nephew going for a walk, and along the walk there was a digger working in a big yard, and he was just enraptured with this digger. And so it's a book about all the places children dream in daytime and also at nighttime. Just recently released on March 12th is Circle of Love, an LGBTQIA squared children's picture book about this little girl, Molly, who invites you to the Indian Center for a feast. And we meet all the people she loves. And it was actually inspired, I was asked by the Portland Indian Health Board, the Native Portland Indian Health Board, to write a book for them about all the different ways our people see sexuality. And so that's how this book, Circle of Love, came to be. So those are the ones that are on the horizon. I'm working on a book right now about grief for children, and an adult nonfiction book coming out in January 2026 about the light that we carry inside.
Oh, wow. I can't wait to take a look at those books. And then kind of going back to the books that you've mentioned, I know you mentioned the illustrators for those books. Can you tell us how that collaboration goes when you work with illustrators? You kind of just give them your script for the book, and then they come up with the creativity behind the illustrations to the book, or do you give them kind of ideas or pointers on what you are hoping for?
Yeah, it depends with each artist and the publishers, because some publishers, really foster a relationship between the author and the illustrator, and some are like, you are both your creative person. And so once the words are done, then the illustrator goes to work and there's no conversation, which always to me seems a little bit odd. So I really prefer collaborating. And so I give some ideas, because when you're writing, you do have, it's like, for me anyways, it's like I see a movie. And so I do put some illustration notes in, but it is also their creative process, right? So it's a dance. And I think for me, the thing that I always think about is a few years ago, I was in one of our provinces in Prince Edward Island, way, way, way far away from Victoria. And I was in a kindergarten class, and I had been reading My Heart Fills with Happiness, and this little guy put up his hand, and he said to me, sometimes the person who draws the pictures tells the story better than the person who writes the words. And I thought that that's so true, right? That the illustrator really brings a book to life. And so their role is so important. And when you can work in a collaboration, it's beautiful. When Nicole and I worked on Braiding Sweetgrass for Young Adults, I went to Santa Fe and stayed with her and her family for a week while we chose what would be all the illustrations for each chapter, what would be included in those illustrations. And that was such a beautiful process. There's something really magical about creating together.
And I know, Monique, we use a lot of your children's books and a lot of our early learning programs here at Native Health, and I feel like a lot of The popular books that we've seen with our families are When We Are Kind, My Heart Fills with Happiness, and You Hold Me Up. And I know you kind of gave us a backstory behind My Heart Fills with Happiness. Can you tell us kind of what inspired you to write When We Are Kind and You Hold Me Up?
Mm-hmm. When We Are Kind was inspired, actually, interesting you asked that, in Phoenix. We as a family, my son was there for a baseball tournament during spring break, and we as a family went. And he was on a team where they were like select boys, and so they didn't really know each other before they got to Phoenix for this tournament. And what I kept seeing was these acts of kindness between them, which, they were 14, 15-year-old young men. And as the week went on, these acts of kindness really strengthened who they were as a team and their success as a team. And so it just got me to think about, what happens when we are kind to each other, to ourselves, to animals, and to all living beings, and to the earth herself. So that was the kind of founding place for When We Are Kind. And You Hold Me Up was, I did a paper for the 25-year celebration of Aboriginal Head Start here in Canada. And at the evening when we were celebrating that whole 25 years, I asked people to go around the room and just say the name of people who had contributed to Head Start, but weren't present in that moment. And as we went around, something in the room, it just became, it was like there was these little fireworks going off the whole time on Asher, and goosebumps. It's like all those people whose names we said came into the room, and the room got so full. And it was that inspiration of when we hold each other up, so much beauty can happen. And what's so interesting to me is the states that have banned that book. It's so interesting to me. It's okay, we're talking about how we hold each other up. Why is that a book to be banned? So I think we as a society have work to do when we think about caring for each other as something that we don't want children to learn about or to understand how to do. So it's part of why I keep writing also, right? To help children know that their humanity and each other's humanity is important.
No, that is great. Thank you for sharing that, Monique. And I know another book that we've used in a lot of our youth programs especially is Braiding Sweetgrass. Can you tell us more about this one?
Yeah, Braiding Sweetgrass for Young Adults is the adaptation of Dr. Robin Wall Kimmerer's book, Braiding Sweetgrass, that came out in 2013. It is about a third of the content of the original book. And I'd say it's for young adults and for young at heart. It has illustrations, it has reflection questions, it has definitions. I needed to include definitions because there was so many words I did not know what they mean. I'm not a botanist, so for me it's what does that mean? And if I don't know, then the likelihood of most people, if they're not botanists, knowing. So let's put definitions in. Let's put experiments in. Let's put activities in. Each chapter ends with a call to action. So it is a book that really takes all of the beautiful teachings from Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer and makes them in a way that just, I think, weaves in our social and emotional learning in a way that makes it user available for both young and young at heart. It really has been my most, other than Tilly and the Crazy Eights, it has been my most joyous project to work on, and also the one where I felt the most responsibility because of, the poignancy of Braiding Sweetgrass.
Wow. And do you have a favorite literature genre?
I really love biographies. I like learning about people, what makes people, why people think they do like they do, why people make decisions like they do, why people take the actions they do or why they don't. I really, really love biographies.
And what is your favorite biography book?
I would say it's Love by Leo Buscaglio. It's this beautiful book of where he talks about, in many ways, being an outcast all through growing up because his mom would, put garlic around his neck and do all kinds of things to make sure he stayed healthy as a young Italian boy. But it really taught him about love. And then he taught love at, oh my gosh, my apologies, but I forget exactly which prestigious university he taught this love class. It was the first one ever. And nobody thought it would fill up, so they gave him the smallest room on campus. And it, for years, was the most popular course there.
Oh, wow.
Because I think it's one of the things that we want most in life is to feel love. And when we feel love, it's easier to be able to be loving, right? Like it's a reciprocal, it's an emotion that needs reciprocity. We can't just keep giving out love without receiving it. At some point, we get depleted. So it is an emotion that requires reciprocity. So that is I read it once a year for sure. And it's my favorite one to give away, but I have to find it at used bookstores. It's the only place you can find it.
Do you think it's important to encourage youth to read and write?
Oh, I totally do. Reading, yes, and also listening to audiobooks, and listening to our oral stories. I think stories, no matter how you absorb them, are so important because they're like the fabric that help us to understand the world. So whether those be stories with elders and knowledge holders, the stories in our families, the stories we read in books, the stories we listen to, the stories we watch on TV, however we absorb stories, they're so important in our lives. And when we can have children at a young age beginning to understand the importance of stories, then we're giving them a real gift, I think.
Oh, yes, that's definitely true. And what advice do you have for the youth thinking about being a writer?
To always carry something with you that you can write with, whether that's a notepad or a device or some way, like when a gift of an idea comes, how do you love that gift into being? So whether it's on a notepad, I have a collection of napkins from restaurants when ideas have come in coffee shops. I have notes on my phone. I have all kinds of things. But when an idea comes, find a way to love it into being and to write as much as possible, whether that is handwritten or on a device, and to listen to as many stories as possible and different stories. Surprise yourself with the genre that you might not think that you love. Like, I'm not really a horror person, but Andrea L. Rogers wrote that beautiful book, Monsters. And it was amazing, absolutely amazing. And she has a new book coming out, a children's book called either Family Gathering or Family Gathers, about feasting together. So, when we look at the gifts that our people have, the ability to write horror stories for adults and young people, to writing beautiful children's books about feasting together, right? Like, I always think this is something that I want our young people to understand, is that we are so incredibly blessed with gifts, and to take time to cultivate your gifts, to surround yourself with people who value your gifts and support you and hold you up. And to do that also with other people, to not only be the recipient of that, but to also give that to other people. Those would be the key things I think I would say to young people, to believe in yourself and to believe in your dreams.
And Monique, what do you consider to be one of your biggest accomplishments?
I'm not sure accomplishment is the right word for this one, but I would say my family, my twins, having them. We tried for a long time to get pregnant, so they really, really are miracles. And I have learned so much from them, and I continue to learn so much from them. I would say that they are my greatest blessings.
Aw. And finally, how can our listeners find more information about your writings and your books?
I think go to your library, ask for anything written by Monique Gray Smith, Gray with an A. Your bookstores, if they don't carry anything, they can pre-order. They can order them. And also on my website, all you do is Google my name, Monique Gray Smith, and the website will come up. All the books are listed there. I always encourage, please, go to your local bookstores, your independent bookstores, and if you have to, then, Amazon is there. But let's support our local bookstores and our libraries. That's probably the easiest places for people to find me.
I would like to thank you, Monique, for coming on air with us today to tell us about your amazing books that you've written and also giving us the backstory on your books and giving us a lot of great advice as well.
I appreciate that. Thank you for our visit, Lanasha. Have a beautiful day.
Thank you for listening to Native Talk Arizona, supported by Native Health and KRDP 90.7 FM. Audio editing by Javier Quiroga, and the executive producer is Susan Levy. And I'm host Lanasha Puwadi. We hope you tune in again next week. If you have any questions, please email us at nativetalkaz@radiophoenix.org.